What is up, fishing world? This is Pedal Pirates. I'm your host, Nolan Minor, and today I'm having a guest on who y'all are probably all familiar with. Going to have my younger brother on. I thought that it may take a little bit this season before I got to have him on, but what do you know, right out of the gate here in the early part of the season, I'm going to get to have him on. So yeah, looking forward to this one. Should be a good time, and hope y'all enjoy.
Come on, man, let's roll. What the?
To catch the fish, you need to be one with the fish.
With PowerPole shallow water anchors, you'll get the ultimate in precision, power, and control, so you can catch more fish. No face paint or phony fins necessary.
This is the mountain, and this is mountain whiskey. Unspoiled, untamed, forever wild. There's no safety net, no way down. Up here, it's just man, and the mountain, and his tin cup. Tin Cup Whiskey. Mountain whiskey.
Want to know the difference between power bait and other soft plastics? Ask the fish. Berkeley scientists have. Thousands of flavors tested on thousands of fish. Natural. Man-made. Every bait that's ever hit the water. No matter the shape, size, or color, power bait is the only one that is scientifically proven. Fish bite and will not let go.
Nice, dude. Yeah, buddy. What is up?
How's it going?
Pedal Pirates, and we have my brother Ewing on here. Just had a pretty good tournament down on the Harris Chain. For folks who don't know who Ewing is, I feel like probably most of the people that kayak fish that watch probably know who Ewing is, but he is my younger brother, has had a very successful few years of kayak fishing, and this year is looking like it's probably going to be another one of those successful years. Ewing and I have been fishing together for a long time, so this is going to be hoping I'd get to have him on this year. Thought maybe it would take a little longer for us to have him on, but here we are. Didn't take him long. First Hobie event of the year. He won it in pretty spectacular fashion, and so we're going to dive into that and probably talk some other things kayak fishing. But yeah, here's Ewing. Ewing, I don't know. You want to tell people how many tournaments you've won or something?
I mean, I think just the 3 BOS events, one each year, and then a couple of the college BOS that's still growing. So right now it's pretty small, but if there is anyone out there that's watching that knows someone that might be interested, maybe fishing in high school and doesn't have a boat, that is an option. There are our kayak teams giving out the same scholarship as the boat team, so it's headed in the right direction.
Yeah, Ewing is part of a college fishing team. I'm good friends with his coach, who I fished with or fished against / fished with when I was in college. His name is Hunter Sales. They are running a really, really awesome program there at Carson Newman. And yeah, I mean, y'all are, probably one of the top 3 talked about in college fishing right now. And they've got a kayak team There's a couple other college kayak fishing teams, but for the most part, Carson Newman is kind of where it's at right now as far as resources and ability. And you got 2 awesome lakes right next to, well, one awesome lake, one lake has been awesome. It's maybe not awesome right now, but it comes and goes. But they have a lot of fishing opportunity there close to Carson Newman, and that's part of why everybody that is fishing there does so well and why that team is such a strong force. But yeah, we're kind of here to talk about that. But I guess most importantly, we're here to talk about the old Harris chain. Ewing and I just fished an event down there. It was the Harris chain, and then there was one other lake where competition waters. Yale Lake was another lake that was opened up, and it's part of the Harris chain, but it's not connected by water, so it doesn't have boats going into it from the Harris chain during tournaments. And so Ewing and I going into it, we're banking on that one lake without the tournament pressure being kind of the wild card, the one that hopefully would be better, because the Harris chain has been absolutely pounded by tournaments this season so far. But what do you know? Ewing goes and wins it on the spot that has been pounded into the dirt. He was familiar with it because of some college fishing he did down there, but I'll let him tell y'all more about that. But yeah, Ewing, just kind of tell me, I guess, how things set up as far as how your practice was and then what your outlook was going into this tournament.
I mean, practice, I only got one day for the kayak tournament, but we were down there for 2 different tournaments with Carson Newman for MLF as well as a college bass tournament. So I had 11 days down there, but literally the Bassmaster college tournament was pushed forwards one day, making it so I could fish that tournament and still fish the BOS on the Harris chain. I don't know how that changed. Maybe Steve Owens, since he's now the kayak series for the tournament director for the Bassmaster kayak series, maybe he said something about it. I don't know, but that was really cool that it worked out that way. And when I got down there to practice showed up at 1 a.m. or something, drove down after class Thursday, woke up early on Friday, went to Lake Yale. That was the oddball without all the tournament pressure. There was a lot of brown grass, and I wanted to fish grass, unlike Nolan always talking about grass is his weakness. That's I feel like grass is, at least offshore grass, is something that I've become more familiar with in the past couple of years, which, being in Virginia, there's not a whole lot of it. But now that I'm at Carson Newman, that's part of what makes the team good, having these different lakes around that we can, experience all these different fisheries. But yeah, so I wanted to fish grass, and they had, what was it, the Tuesday before the tournament, they sprayed.
Yeah. I showed up at the ramp at Yale Lake, which, a little bit of backstory, we both knew that Yale was really good because Ewing had spent some time out there fun fishing when he was down there for the tournament. And then also I have friends from the area that have just, I've heard nothing but good reviews about Yale Lake. But the one thing that is very hard for any lake to overcome, usually impossible for any lake to overcome, is when they spray the grass. And there were signs at all the boat ramps at Yale Lake that they had sprayed the grass a couple days before we got there. So even though it's this great lake full of great vegetation and lots of fish, things were not looking great on Yale Lake when we got there for practice. And that was what we were banking on, was fishing that lake. But continue. Yeah,
the grass on Yale, like Nolan said, when I was out there fun fishing, it was green. There were tons of fish in it. Lots of offshore grass there. But the same grass that was bright green when I had fished it a month prior was just brown, gross, slimy, not at all what you want to be fishing. I had a good amount of shell beds that I marked, and I caught some fish off of those. They actually had a lot of fish, but just not the size that I knew would be needed to even cut a check. It was, 16, maybe 17 inches. And I just decided that I'd go and fish where, the college tournament was won there on that spot in Dora. And I also had practiced there, so I was familiar with the grass. But as everyone that's fished Harris Chain knows, or at least out of a bass boat, you've got to get a good boat number to get on a place like that. And with the kayak tournament, it's just who can pedal fastest. And I wasn't the fastest there, but I was the fastest one to the spot. So that's what mattered. And, I sat on that one patch of grass all day long, and it was pretty incredible.
Yeah. So the spot that we're talking about, it's in Lake Dora on the Harris Chain. And so you knew this spot. You said you practiced it. You practiced it from a bass boat.
Yes.
What was it? What's the cutoff for the Hobie tournaments? So Hobie tournaments have a cutoff now for when we can practice. And what is it? Maybe 20 days prior to the start.
It's 21 days before the start of the tournament.
Okay. So so the lakes go off limits 21 days prior to the start of our tournament. So Ewing narrowly was within the window by fishing those college tournaments. He was safe by 1 day. So he was still allowed to fish our tournament. But when he's saying he practiced there, he means that when he was in the bass boat down there for the college tournament, he practiced this area. In his 1 day of practice from the kayak, you didn't have time to go there. You just fished Yale, and you said, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I had already talked to, a lot of people that are watching this probably know Jordan Marshall. He won AOY. What was that, 2021 for the BOS series. He lives a short ways away from me. We fish together all the time. And he was down there fishing in that area. And I told him, I was like, hey, if you can't find grass, there should be some here. But if they're there, I'm fishing it with you. And we had already agreed to fish together. And, it was just a magical spot, the fish. I think where the water in Dora is very, very muddy, if anyone has seen it before. And then right next to Lake Dora, there's a short canal that's also very popular, but you go straight into Bouclair, which is the cleanest water on the entire Harris Chain. Doesn't even compare to any of the other lakes. And I believe all those fish go there to spawn, and this grass patch was a stopping point for them.
Yeah, so like you're saying, the Harris Chain is very dirty, and there's, I don't know, for me, the Harris Chain seems like it's 95% bad habitat and 5% really good habitat, and all the fish sit in that. It might not even be 5%. It might be like 0.75% of the entire water is where all the fish live. But that's why that lake fishes like that. That's why in your college tournament, you weren't able to get on the spot at all because you didn't have a good boat number. And that's why that spot is somehow good enough to get throttled by boats. And then just, I guess there's not that much good habitat to go around. So when they get caught, there's more fish waiting and they go in and jump in their place.
There's probably a total of an acre of green grass on the entire Lake Dora, and this makes up for half of it. We had scanned.
You can say that because you idled for.
I idled 2 laps around Harris, 1 lap around Dora. We had 11 days down there. We had a lot of stuff to look at, and we found that in one of our 2 days of practice for the MLF tournament. So it was kind of in a place that people would already be looking, given that the year before the tournament was won right there at the mouth of the canal. It's kind of in the same general area. There were tons of boats throughout there. And we knew going into the tournament we probably wouldn't get on it. But, we dropped a skull and crossbones on that grass patch during practice because my roommate and fishing partner, Drake, caught a 4-pounder, and I shook one off that felt really big at the same time. Anytime you're in grass and you have something like that happen, it's really good. But yeah, going into day one, show up, and there were, I'd say, at least 30 to 40 kayaks at the launch, and that stressed me out a lot. Just showing up, knowing you're close to the place you want to fish. It's not like it's a sneaky spot. It's pretty obvious if you go past it. you see it if you have your electronics on. And it just has so many big fish in it. I've pedaled harder than I've ever pedaled in my entire life, and then realized everyone was going to Bouclair. I did not know at the time, but the only ramp that was available in Bouclair didn't open up till 8 a.m. So everyone that was fishing Bouclair was putting in there. And I thought, oh, everyone's found this. I'm going to have to go scrap something together somewhere else. And it was just Jordan and I there on the day one. And I've actually got the bait right here. It's a Golden Shiner jackhammer. And
is that a half ounce or a
half ounce?
Half ounce.
This is the bait that I caught every single fish on. It's grass fishing is amazing. Your baits don't get beat up. Your hook stays sharp. But I caught every single fish on day one and day two that ended up in my final limit on that bait. Went through a bunch of trailers. But on day one, started off, and I was just reeling the jack.
Okay. I'm gonna cut you off. Yeah. Explain when you are in your kayak and you're lined up to make, because I assume it's kind of one cast or maybe not many. It's not a big area. Like what's out in front of you? What are you fishing? How deep is it? Like what?
So I was sitting in, I think it was 10 to 11 foot of water. Never turned on my sonar, side scan, or live scope on day one. Since those fish, they do get pressured. They get, on a weekly basis, bags, maybe not as big as that day one bag get caught, but very respectable limits. So I didn't want them to have a clue that I was there. And I was just sitting I drop waypoints where I like to sit as well as where the grass is. So I was just trying to keep my boat over top of those waypoints that mark, where I catch fish, and casting towards the grass waypoints. But the grass went from, it started because right on the bank there wasn't grass. Out off a little, you had to get 7 or 8 feet before it starts, and it stopped at about 10 foot. And I had to let my jackhammer fall, which usually fishing a chatterbait, you chuck it out there and start reeling. But this was very deep grass to be throwing a chatterbait in. And I was just creeping it along through that grass. And I caught a couple fish right off the bat, just reeling it. But I can't remember. I ripped my chatterbait out of some grass, and either my hand slipped off or I had to adjust my 360 because the wind was blowing.
And when he says 360, he doesn't mean like Humminbird 360. You mean your drive.
Hobie 360. Yeah. So I was adjusting that to keep myself positioned since the wind was directly at my back. There was no way I would have been able to do it out of any other kayak. Jordan was there doing loops in his 180, which is just the traditional forwards and reverse with a rudder. But I was able to sit there, and at some point my hand came off the handle of my reel, and one knocked it so hard it about took the rod out of my hand. And that was like a 6-pounder. It was 21 inches long. Didn't think much of it at the time. Then I kept throwing, no bites. Rip it out of some grass and kill it. I caught another one that was, I don't remember exactly how big it was, but another very big fish. And that kind of set the tone for the day. It kept going good. Early in the morning, I was smoking them. There was a shad spawn going on, which definitely helped with the morning bite, since typically Florida in the springtime, morning bite is not when it's good.
And it was not for me where I was. So yeah, that definitely helped you. It was very bad until like noon where I was fishing, but yeah, go ahead.
But Jordan was fishing next to me. He ended up pretty frustrated because he did not realize that you had to kill the bait after ripping it out of the grass. And I paid attention to what he was doing. We weren't allowed to talk about what we were doing like we used to be able to with the rule changes in Hobie.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you again. So yeah, the Hobie BOS series changed the rules this year, is what Ewing's saying. And so where we used to be able to talk with other competitors throughout competition, and we used to be able to call each other on the phone during competition, that one was kind of crazy. I would understand if they did away with that. I don't know. I could see potentially this rule changing a little bit in the future, because basically the way the rules are now is I can talk. So Ewing and I, for instance, or any other competitor, we can talk to each other during practice. We can call each other on the phone during practice. But then as soon as competition begins on day one, there's no communication. Once first cast, there's no communication verbally or any other way about fishing. So if I'm fishing next to somebody, I can't say, hey, man, I caught this one on green pumpkin. I can't say anything like that. I can say, hey, man, what'd you bring for lunch? Or like, hey, man, is it okay if I fish next to you? But besides that, I can't really say anything. So Ewing's saying he was on the spot with his friend. Ewing knew how to get bit, but he wasn't allowed to tell his friend. But yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. And it got to a point I had somewhere between 95 and 100 inches. And I decided, I said, once I got over 95 inches, I'd just let it rest. And I sat there and I was just watching Jordan fish, and he wasn't getting bit at all. He set the hook on one. And I figured, that probably got him fired up. Let me make one more cast real quick, just in case, because you never know when those big bites are going to come. But typically catching a fish makes other fish start feeding. And as soon as my bait gets down there, start reeling, gets hung up in some grass, rip it out, kill it, just like before, another 21-inch fish. And I didn't cast much after that point. I sat, guarded the spot, because tons of bass boats know about it. I'd see people running back and forth, eyeballing me all day, wanting to get on it. And sat there most of the day. Steve Fields pulled up at some point midday, and I decided, media boats here, you gotta throw a few casts. And I caught another. It might have been I think it was my 21 1/4, like 3 or 4 casts after he pulled up and dropped the trolling motor in the water. Took a picture with it. Told him, I was like, I'm not gonna cast anymore. I was like, I've got what I need. If you want to take some pictures, you can, but I probably won't fish for the rest of the day. And he went on and sat there until probably 12, 1 o'clock. And I saw where Justin Largan, who was in second place, he was making a run. I had 101.75. He culled from 95 all the way up to 99.75. And that just where I knew what caliber fish that I was dealing with, and I still had an 18-inch fish in my limit. I decided I'd better be safe and try to catch one more of those 20 to 21-inch class fish. And made 5 or 6 casts and set the hook into a fish that didn't move at all, and thought it was a catfish, where one of my buddies during the college practice for the college tournament caught like a 15-pound channel cat off of that spot, because it was staying down, not really fighting at all like a bass. And when it got up next to the boat, I saw what it was, and the hook popped out right when it hit the surface. Usually would have been one of those heartbreakers, but I managed to get the net up under it and get it scooped up. And that was my biggest fish of the event. It was 24 1/4 inches long and 8 pounds, 4 ounces. It was spawned out, which is the craziest thing. It had very little gut. It was just big frame, thick all the way through the tail. Probably a 10 plus during, a couple weeks before.
Yeah.
But regardless, kayak tournament, 24 1/4, amazing fish. Especially in Florida, that's where those kickers are what make or break your day. And from that point on, I was just sitting there and just kept thinking, I have another No, I guess at that point, my smallest fish was a 20-incher. I had 107 and a half. And at the end of the day, because the last cast I had made at that point, it was 15 minutes until line's out. And I was thinking to myself, okay, the last fish that I caught was an 8-pounder. And I hadn't caught a small fish since the morning time. So I was thinking maybe the big ones had pulled up, and made a few more casts, and it was like 2:53 was when my picture was, and line's out at 3:00. Caught another 21-incher, and that put me to 108 and a half, which, I mean, that bag right there is what won the tournament for me. The next day, I put up another very solid limit, especially considering the conditions with what I was dealing with. But that 108 and a half it put me almost 9 inches ahead, and gave me a lot of confidence going into the next day, at least that I could cut a check. You never know what's going to happen if someone's going to show up.
For people who don't kayak fish or aren't super familiar with it, 108 inches, I mean, I know some of the fish were spawned out, but that's like 28, 30 pounds for 5, right?
Yeah, it was. Well, I had
you only weighed 1, right?
I weighed 2. I had an 8.4 and a 6.10.
Oh, yeah, so it was probably 30 pounds.
And then the rest of them couldn't have been under 5 pounds.
Yeah.
So it was
a very big bag of fish.
Yeah, it was by far the biggest bag that I've ever caught. Haven't had anything come even close to that in my life. But yeah, going into day 2, I mean, I went back, re-spooled the one rod that I caught him on, because, you know, anyone that has put a lot of pressure on fish repeatedly, especially with the saltwater fishing that we do, you know, mono and fluorocarbon both, when you put a lot of pressure on it, it's becomes weaker. So I re-spooled that one rod just to give me a little extra confidence, went to sleep, got a full night of sleep, and day 2 showed up. And this time Jordan, he went on and fished somewhere else, since he wasn't in contention he could have cut a check, but wasn't in contention to win. So I had it all to myself, and it was polar opposite conditions. The temperature was similar, but instead of being, you know, blowing straight into this point with grass on it, it was slick calm. And early on, I was sitting there. It was short pedal from the ramp, and just sitting waiting on first cast of kayak tournaments. You have 30 minutes to get to your spot. Well, you can launch 30 minutes before first cast, but you can't cast until a given time. So I was sitting there waiting on that first cast, and a school of needlefish, which is really interesting that those lakes have needlefish, since
they got them.
Fishing saltwater, and that's something we see all the time. It's looked like saltwater when I saw this that morning, but waiting on first cast, a school of needlefish comes over the grass, and just giants come crushing them. And I'm sitting there, just hands in my lap, can't do anything about it. And they were going, it looked like, you know, jacks busting big mullet out of the water. Dang. Didn't even sound like bass blowing up. And I just sat there and waited, and then a bass boat ran straight over the grass, slick calm, nothing happening. And for my first, I don't think I caught a fish or got a bite even for the first 15 minutes of the day. It was kind of stressed me out a little bit, didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but I backed off of the grass just since there were boats running over it constantly with the tournament blasting off. I was, you know, take them 30 seconds longer to go around me, but they want to beat the other guy to the spot, since that's how Florida works. And backed off of that grass, and I caught 2 19s back-to-back cast out probably 30 yards away from the grass. They were probably chasing bait or something out there. And that gave me a lot of confidence. So I was like, all right, if I catch 3 more decent fish, I'll probably win this tournament.
Yeah.
And after that, it was just fairly small fish, mainly 15 to 16 inchers and smaller. I couldn't find that big bite that I was having the morning before. Had constant boat traffic, and I never got a big bite within 15 minutes of a boat running over the grass. I would occasionally get some small ones, but you could really tell if there was a 30-minute period that a boat didn't run over, I'd get a bite every 5 or 6 casts. And I just knew that if I stuck it out, I'd eventually get those bites. I filled out a limit fairly soon after those 2 19s. I had to pull out a worm to do that, but I ended up culling those out later and just sat there all day rotating baits. What'd you say?
Were you using a swimming worm or just like a stick bait?
OG speed worm.
Gotcha. Continue, sorry.
It's something that I had a little more confidence throwing, because when I'm dragging something, everyone throws a speed worm in Florida, obviously. And I felt like showing them something a little bit different was, could have helped me get a bigger bite. That original speed worm, it's pretty terrible if you're trying to swim it, but when you pull it really fast, it thunks almost like a lipless crankbait would.
Yeah.
So I was thinking when I rip it out of the grass, it could have a similar reaction to the way that the chatterbait was doing, but a little more subtle. And I caught probably 30 fish throughout the day. Just the big ones seemed to have disappeared until the very end of the day. I noticed all the bass boats were headed back towards Harris. It's like, all right, they probably had weigh in at 3 o'clock, which is our lines out.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to sit there, and when I waved like a madman at the wake boats and pontoons, they actually went around, whether they thought they were going to run aground or not. I'm not going to worry about that, but it helped me out. So I ended up catching a 17 and a quarter and a 20 and a quarter, I believe is what it was in the last 30, 45 minutes of the day, both on that jackhammer, and culled out the worm fish that I had, putting my total at 93 inches for the day. So that, looking back at it, I think I only needed like 78 or 79 inches on day 2 to win it.
It's not very much. How many pounds would 78 inches be?
Could be 12 pounds, really.
Yeah. That's just for perspective for everybody who's familiar with kayak stuff.
Yeah, I had 93, which I estimate between 16 and 18 pounds.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'd give it 18.
But nothing compared to the day before, but still phenomenal day. Anytime you break that 90-inch mark, which is an 18-inch average, it's a good day out there. Almost anywhere in the country, you can go catch that and either win or cut a very good check. So that had me feeling much more comfortable. But with the way that Florida is and the fish get so concentrated all throughout the day, I was thinking one of these guys in the top 5 could pull up on something random and in 5 casts catch the same bag, if not bigger, than what I had the day before.
Mm-hmm.
Knew that I wasn't safe with, even though it said on Tourney X I had a 15-inch lead or whatever. That's not safe in Florida with the big fish.
No. I mean, it gives you a pretty good chance that you're going to do okay, but it's not like if you were somewhere else where that's literally impossible. It's very within the realm of possibility, especially on the Harris.
Like if I was on Cherokee and had a 15-inch lead, I'd probably you just go eat pizza or something. but the Harris chain produces massive bags all the time. So I knew that was possible, and I kept grinding it out till the very last minute. And when I had 93 inches, I felt like I had done what I needed to do, and did that and a little bit more. So
Yeah. So what was your 2-day total, and how much did you win by over second?
my 2-day total was 201.5. I can see real quick. They still have the
Standings up.
standings on Tourney X. So I had 201.5, and second place was 186.75. So about, what was that, 14 and a quarter?
Yeah,
Or
it's a lot.
14
I don't know if that's actually what it is. I'm not going to do the math, but it's enough.
Yeah,
I was just wondering. Justin got second, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Justin's also from Virginia. He's
Yes.
from Northern Virginia.
But that, he probably fishes the Potomac a lot.
Yep, he does.
In Virginia, so
He
that
does.
would explain why last year at Winnipesaukee, he won on largemouth, and that's Potomac has a lot of grass, and he historically does very good on grass fisheries. He also won the Bassmaster event on the Harris chain last year. So
Yeah, so shout out to Justin Largan for getting second. I think that's how you say his last name. He's a cool dude, Virginia dude. There's not a ton of people fishing on any sort of national level who are from Virginia, so it's neat when there's a few of us out there.
There is Casey Reed, but we're still trying to convince him to come to a Hobie tournament. He likes his old town with the trolling motor in it. So
yeah. So that's the main difference between the Hobie tournaments and the other tournaments is that in competition, in practice, you can use a trolling motor, but in competition, we're not allowed to use trolling motors, which is, I can see it from both sides. But it's kind of neat to have a kayak tournament that's entirely man powered. Now, I will say, speaking of man powered, Ewing has already been working with Newport vessels, but this year we are now both running Newport vessels, NK 180, which I guess they consider it an electric outboard, but it's a trolling motor. But yeah, we slap them on the back of our kayaks. They are super simple, simple enough that I myself, who I am not mechanically inclined at all, I was able to get one that Ewing had. Ewing had an extra. Mine had not arrived in the mail yet. So Ewing had one that, and he didn't have to use his new one because his old one was still working. So he was like, all right, well, here, you take this one. So I took the box and literally showed up at the ramp and assembled it and put it on my kayak and everything from having I just FaceTime Ewing and he told me how to. I didn't need to FaceTime him, but like I said, I'm not very mechanically inclined. So I was able to put it on my kayak and get everything hooked up. And I was on the water fishing in probably an hour and a half. And if you know what you're doing, it would not take you that long to get that thing on there. And for practicing, wow, that thing really saved my butt, especially in grass. That thing cuts through grass remarkably well. And much of the lake that I was fishing was topped out, even out in the deep water. So for me to, had I not had that trolling motor for practice, I would have just been stuck like probably 75% of my day. But with that thing, you can kind of burn through it, and it's easy to pick it up to clear the grass off of it. Ewing was saying that it makes him wish that sometimes for a bass boat, you could have a trolling motor head as small and a prop as small as what's on that NK 180 because of how well it does in the grass.
Yeah, it'll cut through anything, and I'm convinced it's bulletproof. Mine doesn't have any paint on it. They're originally painted black. Mine's now chrome, and I've just beat it going up rivers, use it like it would be a jet motor going up a shoal in a couple inches of water, and it's bouncing up and down out of the water. Haven't even broken a prop. And that's kind of interesting because when I was talking to Romel, who is the guy that I work with through Newport, and he said that they've never had a warranty claim on the prop, which says a lot about it since there's tons of people that are running them now. And it's hands down the most durable thing that's as far as a trolling motor goes that I've ever seen. I've never run a motor that you can beat that hard and it still runs without a flaw. And
Yeah.
their customer service is great. I had my remote fried, and it got water down in it. They fixed that issue with the new remotes, so that's why I had that new motor that Nolan was able to use. I was sent a motor and a remote, since Romel said sometimes it fries the whole motor when you have your remote short out. They just sent me both so we didn't have to worry about any back and forth business, and said if your old one still works, just keep it as a spare.
And it's not a spare. But yeah, so now I actually have mine, but since I've already put yours on the Kayak, I'm just going to give you my new one in the box. So, and knowing you'll probably just keep using the old one until it breaks, and then you'll get the other one out of the box. But yeah, I'm not even one that even gets excited about a product from a sponsor or whatever when I start using it, but that thing's pretty dang cool. The range that it gives us on the water is pretty nuts. Like you said, on a 50 amp hour, 24 volt lithium, you can go 20 miles round trip.
It depends on conditions, but
how hard you're running.
Wide open, 5 miles an hour. That's my top speed with it. I can go anywhere from, I'd say, 17 to 20 miles on one charge, which is more than enough water to cover in a day in a kayak. If you're doing more than that, you're not fishing enough.
No. Yeah, those things are cool. So you said on day one you never turned on your forward sonar or anything, right?
Never did.
Did you use it at all Did you use it on day two?
I did use it a little bit on day two, with it being slick, calm, and sunny. I think they pulled into the thicker clumps in the grass, and instead of sitting there and fan casting until I hit the thickest clump, I used my live scope just to target the isolated higher patches. They'd stick up about 2 foot higher than the rest of the grass. And that's where I caught a majority of my fish on day two.
I gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, that forward sonar in deeper grass I'm a terrible grass fisherman, but that makes it to where I can actually fish offshore grass and understand it a little bit. Still a mystery to me, but yeah, that's kind of what you're talking about. Sounds more along the lines of what I was doing, although you were catching more fish and having more fun than I was. Let me think. So yeah. So did you ever fish any other baits really? Or like when you got the forward sonar out, would you throw other stuff and they wouldn't really look at it, or you just stuck with the same bait?
I threw probably 20 different baits on day two. I don't even throw a Nico rig, and I threw a Nico rig. Like, I was just trying to find stuff that worked out, because on day two, there was a massive midday lull. I don't know if that happened on day one and I just wasn't fishing, but it seemed like they bit pretty good in the morning, and then it was really tough to get bit, from that. I'd say 11 till 1:30. It was very hard to convince those fish to bite, and there were still a few small fish chasing bait around. I wasn't sure what was going on, but got to keep them honest. And I even threw a jerk bait in 6-inch visibility. So
I didn't realize it was that dirty. That's pretty dirty. Was it just as dirty on day one as it was on day two, or did it change?
It was more dirty it was dirtier on day one with the wind blowing into it.
Oh, wow. Huh. Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, the Harris chain has some funky colored water.
It was kind of weird because it was with the water coming out of Bouclair, it would kind of mix in and out. And at some points I'd be dealing with 1.5 to 2 foot visibility. Sometimes it's 6 to 8 inches. And that's just
Harris chain has weird water. It's super weird how you just drive lake to lake and you're kind of dealing with it's, the majority of the lakes have what I would call that. If you described it to somebody who has been there, if you called it Harris chain stain, they would know what that means. But then some of the other lakes don't have that.
It's just a weird brown. It looks like the water's turning over all year long.
The whole time, yes. And somehow there's giants living in it. So yeah, we'll get away from the Harris chain in a minute. But so what is your best theory as to, I know you said you think that that spot you were fishing is all those tournament fish and fish in general that are going to Beauclair, Bouclair to spawn. You think that's just kind of a stopping point? So they're just traveling back and forth between the two lakes, and that's just a stopping point in the middle that they pull up. And what is your best theory? Because I don't have a theory. What's your best theory on why the Harris chain can continue to produce big bags of fish off the same spots that everybody knows, and they get pounded and pounded and pounded? And, you put the best guys out there, they spread out all over the lakes, and it still will get one off that same little spot that everybody knows. And there's a boat on it, almost every day of the week.
Well, I honestly think that fish on the Harris chain suspend a lot and swim around, and there is absolutely no way to target those fish because they're big bowls. There's not really any change in contours, just kind of steady slopes to the middle. There might be a flat or maybe a 2-foot drop at most. I think those fish, they roam around because they don't have any grass to hold in, and this time of year, Dora's super muddy and most of the grass along the bank is dead, and they like spawning along green reeds and any other type of vegetation with some sandy or hard bottom around it. I really think that was just their stopping point on the way, and I think it happens every single week. I did hear someone caught 20 pounds off of that same grass patch this weekend. So I guess it just continuously reloads.
Is that in the tournament they did that?
Yeah.
What did that place them?
I have no clue. It was just
because that could be really good, or it could be not that good, depending on how the whole chain's fishing.
Yeah, I'd assume it's getting tougher.
Yeah,
it has to.
It has to at some point. You would think it would eventually, but it just keeps kicking them out. I don't know.
I don't really know why. As far as the Harris chain overall, I don't know why Dora and Bouclair are still good and still have a population of fish, because every single fish in that lake has probably been dumped in at Harris at some point in its life.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Out of Venetian Gardens, they have constant tournaments, not just your 50 to 60 boat tournament. Seems like 200 plus boats every single weekend from January until probably end of February, maybe mid-March. And there's tons of fish weighed in, and the same places continue to produce. That part of it still blows my mind that
because
Harris isn't that good.
Right. Well, and it's still hard to think about fish getting released and swimming a long distance back to wherever they were caught. But on a big lake that doesn't have little canals or anything, it makes a lot more sense. Like a bass, like if he just has to swim through the main lake for 8 miles, seems like, that's kind of realistic. But what does if a bass is released at Venetian Gardens, what does he have to do to make it back to where you caught him?
Well, it took us 45 minutes to make that run in a bass boat.
Yeah. That
runs 60 miles an hour. So they have to swim
across Big Harris.
Across Harris, which is probably a 10 to 15 maybe. And then they have to go through the Dead River to get to Eustis. And the Dead River is pretty short idle. It takes 10, 15 minutes to get through, which they don't have far to go across Eustis to get to the Dora Canal. That's a couple miles. Just when you're in a bass boat, it's hop up on plane and get off of less than a minute later, maybe. But the Dora Canal is long, windy, cypress trees everywhere. And if it takes a bass boat 30 minutes to idle through it, probably takes a bass longer to swim through it.
Probably.
And Dora isn't that big of a lake, but it's really long.
You got to cross the whole thing to get to where
the entire
you caught them.
Yep.
So I would really like to see some tracking studies from some Harris chain fish to see, because they have to be doing that. There's no way that they're not doing that. There can't be enough big bass
today. How just if you went to the Harris chain and you just went way in, tagged, I don't know, 50, 100 bass, and see where they go.
Yeah.
Because
I feel like it's probably already been done, but maybe not. I don't know. It's hard to say. But yeah, I would very much like to know what the heck, like, is there just like do they hang out and suspend in Big Harris for a while? And then when they're like, all right, I'm going to make my journey now. I've eaten enough shad. I got food for the journey or something. Or do they just go straight, they get dumped and they're like, I got to get out of this place.
There is a ton of bait in those lakes. So they can probably just start swimming and eat the whole way. And there's very few places on that lake that you can go and not see bait fish. I don't know if it was going on Yale or not, but there's just birds randomly diving.
I didn't see it as much, but I think there's so much grass on Yale that the bait probably lives in that grass a lot more. So yeah, I guess enough about Harris chain. I'm sure you've been on probably more than one podcast already talking about it.
It's 3 or 4 now. So
okay, yeah, I figured you'd probably have had to tell the story, but hopefully you and I got into a little bit more in depth, or maybe covered some details that other people didn't. But so what? Next up, you got the Bassmaster Kayak. What's the title of their series?
Bassmaster Kayak Series, I believe is what it's called.
On Guntersville, and that is
Sunday,
this upcoming weekend.
Yes.
And how many days? 1, 2.
It's a 2-day tournament.
2-day tournament. Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday?
Saturday, Sunday. I will be practicing Friday since this next week is our spring break. So all of my classes were canceled on Friday for some reason. Just the professors decided, they're like, a bunch of people have been talking to me about leaving early and they won't be here. So he said, I won't be here either. And
nice.
I'm going to go down, practice. I was originally just going to go fish it because I have a little bit of experience on Guntersville. I like grass fishing. Just seemed like a good idea to fish, especially since I have a little bit of extra money to cover some tournament expenses.
Yeah.
And then leaving straight from there, I'm going to stay Sunday night and driving to Caddo on Monday. It's my spring break. I couldn't think of a better place to be than catching some bass in Louisiana on my spring break. So that should be a very fun event. Don't know if it'll be one on Caddo or Bistanu. They both have lots of big fish. So that'll be an interesting one to watch play out.
What do you think at Guntersville? Gosh, those fish are very pre-spawn at they're completely pre-spawn at Guntersville. How far is that drive for you guys from Carson Newman?
It's like 3.5, 4 hours.
Terrible. Long drive to Guntersville. So what do you think? You think it'll get one on a trap? I feel like I feel like it'll get one on, but it could be a jerk.
Get one on a trap, a rig, swim jig. There are fish, and there is a massive cold front coming in. So I might be looking for some live scope shenanigans to get into. Because that's grass and live scope are my 2 strong suits. And I definitely think those grass fish get very, very finicky with it being in the 30s. On day 1 in the morning. So yeah, it could be one anyway. There's fish. My buddy on the team, he went down and practiced, I guess it was yesterday, and he caught some fish up shallow and he caught some fish out deeper. So he said there's fish in all stages, and it's kind of a toss up on when you could, or where it could be won.
Well, that's good. It'll keep things interesting, keep people spread out. Because you said it's a pretty big, that'll be probably the biggest kayak tournament that happens this year so far, right?
235 kayaks. So that's biggest kayak tournament I've ever been a part of by far.
Yeah, that's maybe those big championships they used to have.
Yeah, that's weird.
But that's different. Yeah. But as far as like just a normal regular season trail event, that's probably the biggest one that's ever happened, any trail.
Yeah. And I mean, Bassmaster, there was some questionable talk about their kayak series in previous years, but now Steve Owens runs it. He runs the Tennessee Bass Nation series here, and he runs a great tournament, and people are seeing that obviously with their season opener being 235 people registered. Being on Gunnersville definitely helps, but I mean, you can't pull those numbers without people thinking that, this is going to be a well-run tournament. So hopefully all goes well, and
Yeah, that's cool.
hopefully the fish actually bite. I don't know. It's looking like it might be a tough event.
So as of right now, what's the low for Saturday?
I think it was like 33 or 35.
I'm ready to. I mean, I'm not fishing this one, but it just every time that I know people have to fish with gloves on, it just you keep waiting for that last, like when you put them on in the morning, you're like, all right, this is the last time this year that I have to
I don't.
do this. But
I can't fish in gloves. It just doesn't.
Well,
work.
that's where we're different, but there'll be people using gloves if it's 33. What else we got? You and I both are probably talking about fishing that the Bassmaster one on Hartwell.
That will be a phenomenal event.
Yeah.
Hartwell, no matter what time of year it is, you can catch a bunch of fish doing something. That's one of the lakes that it gets a ton of tournament pressure, but it keeps getting better.
Yeah. It just has so many fish.
Yeah.
I mean, I fished it at a bad time of the year, but I caught a lot of fish and I saw tons of fish because it's clear water, which is good stuff. Clear water. Keep that coming. Need more of that.
If fishing around it reminds me of a lot of you could call our home lake, Lake Anna.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that's very, very similar.
But it's fun.
Right.
Very few fun days on Lake
patterns.
Anna. So we're both of us pretty familiar with fishing that style of lake as far as herring fish. They act completely different in Lake Anna, but the shallow ones still act very similar. In that time of year, it will most likely be one on some shallow fish. So
yeah,
boat docks, grass, just clay banks. That's something that can get good there. But
I saw it get good. It's weird, but yeah, they definitely it's dynamic fishery.
The fish will be spread out and should be able to pack a bunch of kayaks on there and not feel like it's overly crowded.
Oh, that place can hide some boats. It's crazy. I've fished a big tournament on it, and you're like, where is everybody? There's a lot of places to hide on that lake.
There's just so many arms on that lake and there's spotted bass and largemouth from dam to dam. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. You fishing any other Bassmasters, or you just those two probably? Or you may just fish one on a whim.
I'm just kind of playing stuff by ear right now. As far as, between the college Bassmaster stuff, which I really like, I'm trying to focus on that this year as far as the points go. We had a good start. Cherokee's the one that I'm most nervous about. When I first came to Carson Newman, I loved that lake. It's kind of been kicking my butt the past couple of years. Got to figure out something there. So if the points keep going well, then I'll keep fishing that. And if not, I'll probably slide into a few more kayak tournaments.
Yeah. So to explain to viewers, so Ewing fishes the kayak stuff, but he's also still at Carson Newman. So he fishes the college bass series and the MLF college series. And historically, your kayak finishes have always been significantly stronger than the stuff on the bass boat side. But this year has started off on a different note. You qualified for the Bassmaster and the MLF championship, both at the Harris Chain, and then you won the kayak series on the Harris Chain. And so the way y'all's program at Carson Newman is run, you will get to continue fishing the Bassmaster college events as long as you're doing well in the points, because they score all you got to fish all four. It's four, right?
Yeah.
So you got to fish all four of the college Bassmaster tournaments to get the angler of the year or the team of the year. And yeah, so Carson Newman's probably going to have a couple teams in contention for that. We'll see who that ends up being. I hope you get to shoot it out for that, because I had a good time duking it out for that team of the year title in college. That's it means a lot. And what's really cool to me about the college series is it's not like there's some big purse that everybody's looking forward to. Granted, the prizes are pretty good for that team of the year, but that's not why.
Well, now the team of the year is also put into the college bracket, which
so that's
something you fished it.
Oh yeah.
You may or may not want to.
Oh no, it's fine. I don't. If it was supposed to happen, it would have happened. I'm happy where I'm at now. So
that's something that not even for the dream of going and fishing the opens or whatever. I'm happy with kayak fishing, but just getting the experience to fish that bracket would be amazing. It's very hard to do, and gotta have a lot of things on your side, but
you do
gotta give it a shot while I can.
Yeah, you have to have a really good season to make that bracket. Well, unless it's just the championship. But to make the championship, you had to have at least one good tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And those championships are then all of the best college fishermen. So you're not going to – people aren't really making it to the bracket on accident.
And the college fishermen are
good.
They're next level.
Keep getting better. I mean, you look at the Elite Series now. Look at the 50 cuts for the elites, and look at how many people in those 50 cuts each time are from college. And people winning tournaments. I mean, it's the young talent right now in the fishing world is crazy. That would be really cool if you're able to have a good boat season too, because I don't know, I can see it going good. I hope it goes well. That would be really neat to see. And,
well, it's previously, it's kind of been not really either shuffling between different boats and, just not comfortable with the boat that I'm fishing out of. But now in a 20-foot Vexus aluminum, it has all the Rances, but forward-facing sonar. It's a great setup. It's just like the Stratus that we used to run, but it's aluminum, so you have the Bass Tracker part of it in there.
Yeah, you guys have been doing well, and I definitely hope to see some more of that. So yeah, any closing remarks? I think we'll probably wrap it up there if you got anybody you want to plug. But
always got to thank Dugout Bait and Tackle. They have supported me since day one when I first got into this national kayak series, and the school has always been great. Carson Newman's been helping back me, sending me to college tournaments as well as kayak tournaments. Z-Man and Seagar both have a great deal with our school, so I've got to shout out them. That's how I get all of my line and these little guys. Great products. I've used Seagar before college and haven't changed. I love it. But Bioenno Power for powering my electronics that I use more than anything else, as well as that Newport. That's about it.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you giving me some time, even though you've had to tell this story several other times. Hopefully there's some people that maybe don't keep up with the kayak world that have chimed in and watched this one because of the Stray Cast platform. So hopefully we're reaching a few people that wouldn't have been exposed to it otherwise. And I hope everybody has enjoyed. Ewing, I don't know. Hopefully I'll have you on again. It wouldn't surprise me if I do. I'm going to thank Berkeley and Abby Garcia. I'm fishing their stuff this year. They're supporters of the show. X2 Power, they are keeping my electronics and my Newport powered this year. And Fishing Online for helping me out, getting all the fishing goodies. And also one of the Fishing Online guys actually caught big bass of the tournament. Seth caught a 25.5 incher down there at the Harris Chain. So big congrats to him. He caught that thing flipping. He was not live scoping or bed fishing. He just caught it straight up on big string with a big flipping stick. So big shout out to Seth. But yeah, that wraps it up for episode number 3 of Pedal Pirates. Hope everybody enjoyed. The next one, I don't know, hopefully 2 weeks. I said I wanted to be on a 2-week window, and then I had this tournament and a bunch of things going on, so we kind of missed that window. But we're going to try to keep them somewhat consistent. Hope you guys keep following along. Hope you enjoyed this one. Check out my YouTube if you want to. My Harris chain video is going to be going up. Ewing's is not because he didn't have his GoPro, but hopefully this hopefully this kayak Bassmaster event on Gunnersville, he will be filming. I bet he's going to be rolling it now because he was kicking himself for not having it for this Harris chain event. Anyway,
bought them out and everything, so we're good to go for Gunnersville.
Yeah, so Ewing's going to be rolling. All right, that is all for Pedal Pirates. We'll see you next time.